Welcome to my tutorial for Super Star Wars: The Return of the Jedi on Brave difficulty. This is basically the normal setting for the game. This game is actually the easiest of the three games on the Super Nintendo. By far. It's actually pretty easy except for a few parts. I found it to be anyway. The final flight sequence is very difficult. That took me around 2 hours just to beat that one part recently when I went back to it. Years ago, I was playing on the easy setting and I got to that flight sequence, but I could never beat it. So this time around, I checked out some speedrun videos, tried to learn what I could, any information, and I got a few ideas by watching the videos, but I really had to put in the trial and error and just kind of grind it out. And I came up with a whole list of notes on how to approach that section, which I'm going to be detailing. I'm even going to include that in the description of the video so that you can go through all the notes and see all the key points of the best way to tackle that part. Because I found some things that make it a lot easier if you approach it a certain way. So I'll definitely break that down. That's going to be the one thing that keeps a lot of people from beating the game, most likely. I mean, even back then, I blazed through most of this game pretty easily. And, it was very enjoyable until that final sequence, which is really pretty shitty. I mean, it's a cool concept, but it's executed poorly. Because you have no spatial awareness of where your ship is supposed to be. And you seem to get hit, you seem, you think that you would be able to fit through certain areas, but you're always taking damage. It's very, very hard to understand what exactly is going on, but I'm going to clarify all that. And I'll break all that down. That's probably really the only part that would really need a tutorial to be, that would help a lot of people, because a lot of this is not going to be too difficult to explain. But yeah, years ago I beat Super Empire Strikes Back when I was young. In about 5 days, I think I borrowed it, and it was a very hard game for me back then, and that was on the easy setting. Super Star Wars I beat later by using a trick where there was a cave where you could farm up 99 lives. And I pretty much used that, and then I really didn't have to master the game beyond that point. So that was pretty easy once I did that. It's a little tedious, but still legit. But, of course, Super Empire Strikes Back was like this, has passwords and unlimited continues. So one thing you're not going to see me using early in the game is the heal force power, which I didn't even realize I had because I didn't even check the controls, and it's been something like 20-something years, maybe 27 years since I played this. Or worked on it at least. So I wasn't thinking about how to switch force powers, but what you do is you press select on the controller and you'll be able to switch between your various force powers. You have Force Saber, which you can throw out your saber. It's one of the four face buttons will activate your force power. I don't remember exactly which button it was, but you'll figure it out just by pressing it on the controller. You'll see if it gets used. But the only one that I really used was heal. You have Vanish, which makes you disappear for a little while, and I think the enemy won't target you, but I never had to use all that because, I found that the game was pretty damn easy with just using heal, and most of the time I used Chewbacca anyway. See, now for this boss, I switched to Chewbacca, which I could have been him the whole time probably, but I liked using him to I liked using Luke to kind of flip through the level with the lightsaber because there's a lot of jumping segments, and I thought Luke was good for the jumping parts. Since while he's spinning with his lightsaber, he will take out enemies that are in the way. So I found that useful. So I start this level off with Luke, and then once I get to the boss, I just switch to Chewbacca. Now this was before I knew about the spin move, which you're going to see me exploiting heavily. But at this point, I'm just shooting the guy, because I didn't realize that Chewbacca had that spin move. I knew about that years ago, but remember, I'm returning to this game many years later, and I didn't look up the controls. I just started playing it. Initially, I wanted to just beat the final stage on easy, resume from my old password, where I left off on the final stage and got stuck on that last flight sequence on easy, but I accidentally put in the password for the normal difficulty, Brave. So once I beat that, I figured I might as well just beat the rest of the game on Brave to just complete that difficulty fully and just to make a video and put up a tutorial on it. I thought it would be cool to play through this again. So yeah, not much to say here. Just keep your distance and shoot at it, basically. When it starts to pound the ground, you could actually go into your spin move and do damage to it. But it's one of your buttons. If you hold it down, you'll spin. But I didn't know about that at this point, so I didn't use it. But you'll see me exploit it because it gives you invincibility frames while you're spinning. You just have to wait for your spin bar to charge up. So yeah, as I was saying with Luke, he has a force power called heal. So just hit select until it says heal. And then you have that force power equipped. Then all you got to do is press the force button, and it'll deplete your force bar when you use it. But you'll be able to heal yourself, and you actually get force power pickups throughout the levels. So even if you waste it all up, you'll probably get more and be able to heal even more. So as long as you keep that equipped with Luke and flip through a lot of the levels, you can usually keep healing yourself and just survive through anything. It makes the game, pretty damn easy. The only real issues is going to be sometimes that I got lost because I didn't know. So I edited some of that down where I got lost really bad. But as far as challenge of the actual gameplay, there really wasn't much aside from... There was one level that was pretty tough where you have to fight a boss while moving on some platforms. And there's a lot of slowdown, so it's kind of irritating. But there was that one stage that was probably a little challenging. But overall, the game, I would say, was really easy for this type of game, especially the games in this series. Aside from that flight sequence, even though the other games were a lot harder, I never beat this one because of that one sequence at the very end. So that's where I'm going to break everything down. That should make it very manageable. It's still going to take a lot of practice, but you'll have a good idea of how to approach it, save some time, and understand what's going on. So yeah, here I'm using Chewbacca's spin attack at this point. In this area, most of the time you do have to clear out all the enemies before the screen will let you scroll to the right. So that's why I'm waiting around. Otherwise, most of the time I try to skip everything whenever I can. I won't fight anything unless I have to, but this part does make you fight pretty frequently. You just got to watch out for these guys with their grab, but as long as you get that spin move in, try to have it fully charged by the time they approach you, and you can take them out with one spin bar. If you can group several of them together, you can take out multiple of those throwing guys at once, multiple enemies at once. Because remember, you're invincible while you're spinning, so you can use that to your advantage to avoid damage, as well. If you're about to take a hit, you can also spin just to avoid damage. It's another way to use it. But I usually use it just to barrel through enemies. I also attack bosses with it while they would be normally hitting me. I can be damaging them, so... It's a great way to fight bosses where you can fire at the boss when it's far away, and as it comes close, you use your spin to kind of counter it and damage it at the same time. So you'll see me do that a lot. So yeah, now you have some flamethrower guys that appear a little bit later in this stage. The game has a decent amount of controls, with the double jumping and characters having various powers. I'm going to recommend the characters that I use, and I'm probably not going to go into too much detail about playing with the other characters because I didn't use them for a reason, because I didn't really find them to be as useful as the characters that I chose. While Han Solo could be pretty good, he seems to, have a lower health bar than Chewbacca, for one. He doesn't have the spin move, which is great for invincibility frames and doing extra damage. But what Han Solo does has that's really good is he does have hand grenades, but you don't get them at this point, but you will get them a little bit later. The hand grenades do a lot of damage, and he has a limited amount of them, but I don't find that good enough to make up for what Chewbacca can usually do. You know what I mean? For me, I usually found the extra health better and the invincibility frames from the spin. So you can also upgrade your guns by collecting those gun power-ups. You see that one right above me. And that'll give you more power to your shots. You can upgrade it several times. It can get pretty powerful. One of them is a homing shot that's pretty good, but you're not going to need that for here. All you really need to do here is just fire at him when he's in the distance, and when he gets, when your bar charges up, try to use your spin on him. Try to get that in. And waste up the full bar on him. You'll do some decent damage and dodge whatever he throws at you. You can also, of course, just jump over. I think he fires 2 bullets and then stops, so you can just jump over those if you want. I kind of just... muscled my way through it because it was easy enough. I think I beat it the first time I got to it, so there was no practice here. It was just, just brute force, basically. But yeah, Chewbacca makes this level a lot easier than when I was trying playing with some of the other characters. It's much easier because you can spin through the enemies and get health back by killing the enemies and collecting the hearts. And you got all those invincibility frames when you're spinning, so... It really makes it very easy. You shouldn't have too much trouble with this. Also, keep in mind that the R2-D2 pickups are your checkpoints. So you always want to make sure that you jump on them so that they fly up in the air. That means that you got the checkpoint. Now, the way the checkpoints work is a little bit unusual, but this game has passwords, but it also has limited continues. But it's not really limited. But the way it works is it'll show that you have 3 continues on, and you have your passwords for each new area you get to. Like, this is another password for this area. But you have 3 continues, and the way it works is if you use up one of your continues, which is when you waste all your lives, you will start at the last R2-D2 checkpoint that you picked up. But when you waste all 3 continues, then you have to input that level password again, and you're going to start at the beginning of that stage. But as long as as long as you're still on one of your 3 continues, you can start at the last R2-D2 checkpoint in the actual stage. So that's how that works. So again, for this, I'm pretty much just barreling through. I use my spin to take out these enemies. But, for the most part, I'm pretty much just trying to barrel through. I'll shoot some guys, but I'm just trying to continue on towards the next area, get to the checkpoints. I don't spend a lot of time collecting shit. But sometimes you can get a little extra health by fighting the enemies and getting the hearts, so that helps. So see these R2-D2 pickups, when you want to always get that. Now this is a shield that I collected. This is good because this gives you a little extra protection and kills off some enemies. It only lasts for a little while, but it's useful. Not that you really need it on this part. I mean, this is pretty damn easy with Chewbacca with the spinning. As you can see, I'm not taking my time to stop or anything like that. And of course, when you get detonators, you want to use them almost immediately. We'll try to wait till there's a few enemies on screen, but they don't last very long. And you activate those by pressing, I believe, X. But you only have a few seconds to actually use them when you pick them up. So just, it's always good just to use them by habit, just to clear out whatever happens to be around in the area. So get another checkpoint here. And then start heading up. And if you do get lost, just rewind the video and I guess check where I'm going. Not that I had the navigation down in this game at all. I would recommend a speed run if you really want to, watch a speedrun video if you really want to see the proper navigation of the levels to get through them the fastest. But I get through them decently enough. There's one level that I edited heavily because I got lost for a very, very long time and made a lot of wrong turns. So I edited it down so that, you pretty much see me going in the areas that I have to go in and not too many optional areas. Just to shorten the video. Now you see these edits. I edit at the checkpoints. I edit all the deaths out. So sometimes you're going to see it just, the Return of the Jedi is going to come up on the screen again, the text, because I died and I started over on the checkpoint. But, I edited out all the deaths, but I usually try to show the checkpoints where I died at. But as you can see, I got through most of them without dying initially. So these parts really aren't hard. You're just going to have to climb up. You just have to time the jumps. But you don't have to wait for the platform, so you can jump up on those diagonal slopes and get some footing, so you don't have to wait for the platform to be perfectly within jumping range. This part you have a lot of bullshit up there trying to hit you, but it's not too bad. Once you get up there, you can kind of just bust up there and get the checkpoint, but it is a little dangerous. But all you need is just a well-placed double jump to get up there and just get around that guy and get that checkpoint. The spin charges up very frequently. You can get a 1-up here. And then there's some other shit back here, so get that. Part of this wall was passable too, but I couldn't go any farther. I don't know if there was anything else in there. I couldn't find anything else. But the spin recharges pretty quickly, so you can use it pretty frequently, and it has those invincibility frames, so it really pulls a lot of bullshit in getting through the levels, So now you're going to start descending down here. So yeah, another checkpoint. Yeah, sometimes I died because in these areas in this game, you know, sometimes it's really not clear where the game wants you to go. So I would end up, you know, wandering around and taking a lot of extra damage. But I think I got it right on this time. But, I mean, luckily these pits are not one-hit deaths. So, you know, you can recover from that. I mean, the game is pretty forgiving overall. Maybe eventually I'll play through the Super Empire Strikes Back game again. I haven't played that in probably 20-something years. Maybe close to 30 years. It's an old fucking game. But maybe I'll play through that again and do a tutorial on that. I probably will at some point. I've been revisiting a good number of games that I beat from the past. I think I'm over 800 playthroughs now on the channel. I started recording in 2016, so that's all been in the last, you know, 4 or maybe 4 years and something, you know, somewhere around there. Well, probably over 200 games a year. But I'm still missing, you know, over 1,000 playthroughs of games I've beat in the past. So there's still a lot of stuff that I could go back to and beat on harder settings than I did in the past, or I could just go back and beat the games again and just do tutorials. I did that with some games like Ninja Gaiden for the NES, Ninja Gaiden 2, and Splatterhouse 2 for Genesis. So this guy's very easy. You know, there's not much to explain here. Just use your spin move to take out his minions and damage him massively. A few spin attacks will basically kill the guy. So aside from that, keep your distance a little bit, maybe fire at the minions if you want. You really don't have to play very carefully. I mean, I played better than I had to. You know, I could have been real sloppy and beat this. Very, very fucking easy. So yeah, I've gone back to a few games that I already beat in the past just to make a tutorial, like Super Castlevania 4, some of the other ones I mentioned. And for some of those, what I would do is I would actually use save and load states to refine each section without, like, maybe, you know, do them without taking damage each section or very low damage, and then I would edit that all together just to make a cleaner run, just for demonstration purposes, to show, you know, how a proper execution of a section would look, you know, in my eyes anyway. How I think it should come out if it's well executed. So sometimes I will refine the tutorials. Now this tutorial is simply me beating the game and then just adding commentary. I didn't do any refinement here. So this is just my first time beating the game. You know, my successful attempts on each section is what's shown. So I didn't go back and redo anything. Which is the case with, you know, 95% of my tutorials are just me beating the game or the mode. And just adding commentary, you know, editing out the deaths. But I do have a few where I went back and I refined them intentionally. And, you know, I always detail that in my descriptions of how the editing was done. You know, I don't try to deceive and make it sound like I did it all in one clean attempt or anything like that. So it's always explained. Always check the descriptions if you're unsure about one of my videos. And it should all be detailed. Most of the time it's just deaths being edited out. You know, I'll just edit out all the deaths. I do occasionally post up raw runs. If they're not super long, I'll post up, like, you know, 4 or 5 hours of me failing a game. I didn't post it up for this game because it was a little bit on the long side, close to 6 hours. But if it was requested, I would post it up. But I just, they don't get tons of views. You know, none of the videos do, but I know sometimes it's cool to see raw footage of all the failed attempts just to see the process that went into learning a game. So I do try to show that sometimes. I always try to be real transparent about my playthroughs and what it took to beat a game. You know, the time and all the failures. The reason that this game took 6 hours or around 6 hours to beat was because of that flight sequence taking me around 2 hours to beat just that. The rest of the game I kind of blazed through aside from getting lost. The game itself takes about an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes to beat without dying. So, there, you know, that's the base time of the game. And then you have another 2 hours for the flight sequence, basically. And then maybe that leaves, you know, another 2.5 hours or something of dying on the rest of the stages in the game. But really it's really not that much. So it was pretty painless overall. I did spend a decent amount of time getting lost on a few of the stages. Even when using videos, some stages were still confusing to me. I tried to look it up, but I It wasn't registering for me in some areas. But, you know, the worst offender is about 40 minutes in or so. And that stage, I edited it heavily to try to show where to go. So I think it shows decently where you need to go. It's not perfect. There was one edit that I wasn't really sure about, so I didn't do the edit because I didn't want to edit it to where I ended up in a totally different place on the map, and then it's going to be really confusing. So I left some of the wandering in. But it's, you know, you'll get the idea. It's a little drawn out, but it will, you know, it will show where to go ultimately. I tried to cut it down as much as I could reasonably. Now, aside from that, all the other stages were pretty much just checkpoint to checkpoint editing. You know, I didn't edit the regular gameplay in the sections, you know, for the most part. But I think there was one area where I did. There was probably only that one area where I edited that down. That I can think of anyway. So yeah, this is a very, very easy stage. It's just, you know, a little lengthy, but it's not hard. You just have to wander around and do some platforming, you know, and just keep climbing and moving. Usually when you see these bones, you got to break through them and go into the next area. Of course, anytime you see an R2-D2 checkpoint, that is the next area you're supposed to go to. I mean, that's probably obvious, but it's not a game that trolls you with fake checkpoints. I guess many old games wouldn't do that anyway, but, you know, usually when you see a new checkpoint, that's the direction you're supposed to be going. So you can use that as guidance. So yeah, another very easy boss fight. If you got some of the power-ups, you'll have, you know, homing missiles, but you really don't need them. I mean, anything is fine. Just spin around, shoot at him when you can. Try to keep a distance and avoid the flame. What I like to do is when he shoots the flame, I like to use my spin if I have it charged up. That way I can get the invincibility frames and dodge the flame and damage him at the same time. That's really the way that I try to do it. But again, this was my first time fighting this boss, I believe. I believe I didn't die on it at all, so I didn't have any practice or anything. I was just, you know, reacting to it. Even the Emperor, I almost beat the Emperor on my first try, and I read a lot of people saying they had a lot of trouble with him, but I found very easy. I have a strategy for that, which is what I implemented immediately. Just common sense for me, budgeting the pickups. As you fight him, you collect the force pickups, and you can keep healing that way. You got to budget them a little bit. If you go through them too fast, you won't have enough healing to do my brute force method that I used. But it makes the boss fight very easy, so I'll explain that. This is a tricky stage. This is one of the trickier stages. I like to skip this first guy, and if you skip this first guy, you get a heart power-up, and you don't have to fight some of the enemies. And like enemies don't appear on these platforms for whatever reason, I noticed. So you can skip that first guy by jumping over him, and you won't have to fight enemies on the other platforms. Just a weird thing I noticed. And it'll also give you a health power-up for some reason. So now I'm basically just platforming through, taking damage, you know, for the most part. I'm just kind of just jumping through. Because Chewbacca has the one weakness of not having a double jump spin slash like Luke. But I still feel like he's worth using in most cases because he has extra health. He has the spin you can use, you know, as needed for invincibility frames and damage. So you can still barrel through a lot of shit. So here you get a checkpoint anyway. So as long as you get here, you'll get your checkpoint. You see, I died here, but I got the checkpoint, so no big deal, really. So make your way up this platform, and for this part, I mainly use the spinning to avoid shots when I get shot at, or to take out the enemies, the human-like enemies. But aside from that, I try to keep moving. I do take damage, but it really wasn't severe enough to prevent me from getting through. But the spinning, you know, like I said, it's preventing me from taking bullet damage as well. So you don't need to just use it for killing shit. You know, you can also use it just to avoid damage. Get those invincibility frames. Here I'm just kind of spinning through here. And, you know, just use the detonator because it doesn't last very long, so it's good to use it up when you get it. I think some of those drops are random, as far as detonators and hearts and all kinds of shit. So yeah, this is an extremely easy boss. The reason you see me pausing and making save states was just in case I needed to practice the boss. But this was my first time playing the boss, and I managed to beat it very easily. Without even knowing what, you know, I didn't watch a video or anything, I just reacted to it. It's very easy. I just stay in the corner. When he throws his chain out, I just jump. So when you see him winding up his chain, just pretty much just wait a little bit and then just jump, and you'll dodge it. It's always safer, to double jump to give you a little bit of extra height just so you don't come down too soon and hit into the chain. But you may also want to jump. When he jumps up in the air and is about to land on the ground, you may want to jump because that may damage you in some way. I'm not 100% sure, so you may want to dodge that as well. But either way, you only have to deal with maybe 1-2 attacks max. See when he jumps and pounds the ground. I think you want to avoid that too. But as long as you're not on the ground, when he lands on the ground from that jump, you shouldn't take any damage. So yeah, very easy. You could probably brute force it and spin into him too and do even more damage if you wanted to, but it was easy enough for me to just shoot at him. And deal with it that way. So yeah, so this is not going to be hard. This is another, most of these stages I'm going to be saying are not going to be hard just because they really aren't. Especially compared to, compared to the other games in the series. Very, very easy game. But yeah, I'm going to recommend Chewbacca for almost every stage. So you're going to see that a lot. Here you can get some bonus shit, so you may want to climb up there and get some hearts. There may have even been some more bonus items up a little higher, but I didn't explore that any more than that. I wasn't really aggressive with picking up, hidden places and items in the environment just because it was so easy to get through. I was just trying to get through the game. So when you land here, you may want to spin, take out that guy, get the checkpoint. I think there's some bonus shit up here. Hearts and an extra, a few extra lives and blaster power-ups. So that's a real good area. That'll give you a powerful gun and a few one-ups. And I probably don't have to tell you this, but if you wanted to, you could keep jumping off the edge of this ship and committing suicide, and you'll respawn at that R2-D2 checkpoint right here, right near the bonus area. So then all you got to do is just keep collecting the one-ups from the bonus area and committing suicide. It would take you a while, but you would be netting an extra life. You'd lose a life, but you'd be gaining 2 lives, so you'd gain an extra life every time you did it. You'd have to commit suicide about 80-something or 90-something times to get 99 lives. I think 99 lives is probably the max. At least that's how the old games were, so I'm guessing this is the same way, since it chose 2 digits. I doubt you can get over 99 lives. But if you really wanted to, you could farm up 99 lives here. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing for some of the later areas, but the game really never gets that hard if you know where to go. So, I mean, I wouldn't really recommend going through all that trouble, but if you think you're going to have a lot of trouble with it, or maybe if you're playing on the hardest setting, maybe it's significantly harder. I haven't tried that yet. But, for the most part, it's up to you if you want to do that, if you think you're going to have a lot of trouble, but if you've gotten this far, you're probably not going to have too much trouble with the game. There is, like I said, one part that's going to keep a lot of people from beating the game. But if you listen to what some of the tips that I have for that final flight sequence, I don't think it's gonna. I think it's going to be doable for just about anyone. It'll definitely cut down the practice time. This is one of the easiest bosses. There's really nothing to do here except stay in the corner. You may want to jump occasionally, but try to kill the frogs. Spin to kill the frogs if you want. Maybe we're just going to be shooting at him. I beat this guy the first time I got to him as well, so not much to explain. Actually, all the boss fights I found to be extremely easy for the most part. It wasn't the boss fights that were actually challenging. It was the, for me anyway, it was the one flight sequence at the end mainly. But remember, it's relative, to if you play through a lot of these games and your skill level and things like that. I'm always just, I'm always only talking from my perspective. I'm not saying that anyone is of a low skill level or that you suck or anything like that, because we're all at different points, in skill. And nobody starts out being good at games anyway. You get better with time. It's years and years of just playing games and challenging yourself, And then anyone will get better. But yeah, I would say though, like I said, if you've beaten the other games, which quite hard games, then you should have no problem with this. And if you've beaten a decent amount of even NES games, this is going to be pretty easy for you, most likely, because this is a lot easier than most NES games as well. So it's relative to the time period that these games, came out. this is a pretty easy game relative to that. This is a very, very easy. I beat this the first time I got to it, and I wasn't even sure what the controls were. I was fucking around with the controller, trying to figure out, the jumping and basically, if you jump into the enemies, I think you can take them out faster if you hit into them, but mostly just going to shoot and try to jump over the little things in the ground that get in your way. There's these little barriers that you can jump over, but I fucked up a lot of it, and I beat this the first time I got to it. Just try to collect the hearts. Focus on collecting the hearts. Sometimes they're hard to collect because your orientation is a little weird, and it's kind of hard to line it up with the hearts. But just try to bump into the hearts to keep your health up, and just keep shooting. I think it's hard to fuck up even if you play really bad. I played this part pretty damn bad, and I beat it my first time. It was a little close, but see, a lot of times I thought I was lined up with the hearts, but it didn't count, so it's kind of weird. The orientation is definitely odd. But, I can't complain about it because it was so fucking easy to complete. It's cool they included scenes like this. I do like these Mode 7 sequences. It's just unfortunate that they fucked up the final stage. Really is badly done. It's just badly designed. It looks cool. And it's cool cinematic piece at the end of the game. I think it's cool in concept, cool looking, And it had the potential to be a really exciting, cool part. But it's just way too disorienting. You just don't have a good feel for where your ship is in the space. It's very hard to get a good centering and to understand what the fuck is going on. So I'm going to minimize the frustration by keeping it to the base amount of inputs and keeping it very simple for that part. And I'm gonna post a complete write-up of my notes that I actually used to beat it, and then I made notes afterwards that I was going to use for this tutorial. That way it was all fresh in my head, so I have full notes on it. And it's not a long list of notes. It's pretty damn straightforward. I really simplified it because I don't like complicated shit. So now we're on our first Ewok level. Now the first one I found to be quite easy. There's a little bit of confusion sometimes of where exactly to go, I believe, but it's pretty straightforward. It's not bad. As far as, you kind of just flip through, shoot shit. Now, the Ewok doesn't really have any special abilities or anything too interesting about him. He just fires his bow, so it's kind of... The only thing about the Ewok is he can fire the arrows into the wall, and he can jump on the arrows and use them for platforming, which you're not going to really see me do, I think, until to the final Ewok level, which is the next Ewok level. That one's kind of a pain in the ass. That's one of the harder levels in the game, especially because it's not clear what to do. I do have a shortcut for that level that I got from a speed run, and I have a trick for the boss that you can extremely exploit the boss of the level, make it super easy, by basically jamming arrows up his fucking ass. And I'm going to explain that a little better. Now, I only beat the boss once, so I only did that once. But I don't think it would be that hard to implement, because as soon as I tried to do it, I pretty much got it. So I think it's going to be doable. So yeah, you do have sliding in this game. There are a lot of moves for the characters. If you press down and jump, or down diagonally and jump, you will slide. And you can do that for most of the characters, if not all the characters. And this guy can as well do that. And if you keep sliding, you can move through some areas rapidly. But of course with Chewbacca, I didn't really find the need to do it a lot with Chewbacca, because I mainly used him, and I could just spin my way through a lot of shit. But if you want to mix in a slide, you can move faster. It is an option. It's just not something that I used a lot, so that's why I didn't really talk about it. But remember, there is other things you can implement and do that I didn't do for my play style. And there's things that I could have used to, of course, move through the game faster and more fluidly. I just, like I said, this was my first time going through each section. This boss is extremely easy, and you get to him very early in the stage, so it's really not a hard stage. All I did was stay basically in one place and just shoot diagonally in the direction he was, and shoot left and right. And I didn't move around much, and I beat him the first time I got to him. It was a little close, but it was another boss that went down the first try. So yeah, very easy. But this next stage is one of the harder ones because it's really not clear where to go. But I'm going to break some of that down. If you have a lot, you can use a lot of continues and keep continuing on the one checkpoint in the level. There's really more than one checkpoint, I think, but there's one main checkpoint. Maybe there's only one. I have to see the stage again, but initially you want to jump down these slopes and get to this tree here, and now you're going to climb up your arrows. See, so now we're using the arrow climb move, which is basically just shooting an arrow into the tree and then just bouncing on it to the next one. And sometimes you can do it really fast, but I did it kind of sloppy there, but it worked. You get the idea. The second half of the level is where it gets kind of confusing and difficult, especially trying to fight the boss and not knowing how to exploit the boss. It can be tricky. But I'm going to show you how to make the boss extremely easy. So, you're going to kind of bust through here. There's a checkpoint down below in that area down there. So you want to get that. And from this checkpoint, I'm going to show you a shortcut to get to around where the boss of the level is. It can save you a decent amount of time. So yeah, I did die a bunch of times on that part. Once I got the checkpoint, I died a lot, but I figured out a few things. So first, jump across here and start working your way up these platforms. But then shortly there's going to be a shortcut to where you can skip some of the climbing. I saw it in a speed run, so I didn't figure it out myself, but it saves you some time, because otherwise you'll have to deal with a lot more enemies and you'll probably lose a lot more health. So this shortcut can be useful. Make sure you kill this insect before you go up. It also drops a lot of health, so try to get up there and collect whatever health you need from it. Take out those flying stormtroopers with a few arrows. Those guys can cause a lot of problems. They'll push you off ledges and they'll damage you. So yeah, in a moment you're going to see the shortcut. You have to climb up a little bit higher. Kill this flying stormtrooper. Always get those guys out of there. And then you're just going to jump over these, swinging fucking sacks. Maybe they're not sacks, but it's close enough. So here you're going to make a really long jump across, and this is going to skip a bunch of shit. So I recommend doing that. Now you may not have much health left at this point, but there's an insect you can kill if you stay back here and kill the insect, and it will drop a lot of health. So try to dodge these porcupines that are bouncing and try to kill the insect and collect the health. Now after you do that, if you get behind this boss and start jamming arrows up its ass directly, you can just get it stuck in one place. You'll see it. See, watch. I jump behind it now. And now it can't do anything. It just stays stuck in that position, and I just jam arrows up its ass. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to pull that off. I may have gotten lucky, but I did it pretty early when I started trying to do it. And I just jumped to get right behind it, and it got stuck. So somehow it triggers it to get stuck, I think, if you get directly behind it after dodging it. And you can just jam all your arrows up its ass. Now, you may need to shoot an arrow down diagonally to take out one of those leaping frogs, because that will eat away at your health if you have a frog jumping around. But that's about it. So it makes that part very easy. So now here's the stage where I got lost the most. And this stage is heavily fucking edited. Like, many times I fell back to the bottom. I had to climb back up again. I got lost. It was pretty much just a big fucking freak show. So this was a lot of editing work to get this to look somewhat respectable and decent. Because, the level itself is not hard. It's just, you don't know where the fuck you're supposed to go. Everything looks the same, and it's a lot of hidden passages and shit like that. So, I'll explain all that. For this lightning, I realized that you can block. I forgot about that because I wasn't using it the entire game. But you can block and deflect shit. And you can also block the lightning. You just hold one of the buttons on the controller. You may have to hold down with it, like crouch and do it, but I'm not sure. But you just hold one of the buttons, you'll block. So be sure to do that for the lightning. Otherwise, you'll keep getting, electrocuted. So you're going to see a lot of edits from this point on to try to show the right path. So you want to go this direction. You want to follow the directions that I'm going initially, across all these areas. There is that platform I just went on that does fall. If you jump on it and it falls and you don't make the jump up here, I'm not sure if the platform will regenerate. You may be able to respawn it by leaving the area and going back, or you may not. So make sure that when you jump on that platform, you make the jump across and don't fall down with it. Because I'm not sure if it respawns. You may have to restart the level. So remember, these rotating cylinders, I thought they were platforms initially, but they actually hurt you. So just avoid those. And go up to this platform here. You're going to go up to this next area up here. And now at this point, I do go down and I come back up again, but I'm not even sure if it was the same area that I came back up to. That's why I didn't edit this whole section out. Because, see, I go down to the bottom floor and I collect the R2-D2 checkpoint. But I'm not even sure if I needed to do all that, because I end up going back up again. But I can't tell you if the area that I went back up to is the same exact area that I just jumped down from. You know, I'm not even sure. That's why I didn't edit out this section. I was going to try to edit it out, but I just wasn't sure if it was the same area. So I didn't want to make the navigation more confusing by, strange editing transition. So I do show all this. And this will at least show you what I had to do to get back to where I was supposed to go. So you can follow that if you're lost. But you'd probably be better off watching a speedrun if you're looking for navigation videos of, where to go in the levels, the fastest routes. But yeah, I start going back up again. And the area I go back up to, it looks very similar to where I just dropped down from. But when I was editing, for some reason it looked different to me. So I wasn't sure if it was a different area or the same. I think it's probably the same area, but I'm just not sure. Because a lot of this shit looks so similar. But if I had to guess, you don't have to drop down in that area and get that R2-D2 checkpoint that I got. You could probably skip all that and just do what I'm doing here. But it's confusing to me because then it's weird to me why did I even go up there in that trailer area to begin with. If I didn't even need to do that. It kind of confuses me as to where where I should have been going from the beginning. Maybe I didn't even need to go all the way to the right, and I could have just went on these platforms to begin with. I'm really not sure. I was fucking confused even when I beat it. I'm real bad with navigation, so I would say just try to figure that out, and you'll probably understand it better than I did. But eventually, you do need to make your way up here to this platform that's moving left and right. That's your way out of this area. And I even did further editing here on these platforms because I fell down and had to reclimb and do a bunch of shit. So you can see the editing transition there. So yeah, eventually you're going to get on this platform. And unfortunately, there's a long wait for it to go all the way back and come back. So I edited out that long wait because it's pointless to watch. So yeah, finally you'll get up here and you'll get the checkpoint. And that's the main issue with this stage. It's not a hard stage at all. It's just very confusing as to where you're supposed to go. But then at this point, there's really not much left to this stage. So if you made it up here, you're pretty much done with the stage. There's really not much left. There's not going to be anything difficult. So I believe you fight you're going to fight a large floating robot at the end of this stage. It's very easy. Even later in the game, you fight two of them at the same time, so it's really nothing special. Now, as I mentioned before, you have the heal force. By pressing select, you can select different force powers. Make sure you have heal selected. And you'll press one of the 4 face buttons, and you'll be able to use heal at any time, as long as you have meter left. So here I'm healing myself. Just make sure to continuously heal as your life gets down to a half or so. Use a heal. And you'll beat the boss easily just by spin flipping and not worrying about dodging anything. All I did was flip at it. You really, the only thing you have to hit is that red part of the ship that I'm hitting. You really don't have to worry about the robots. They'll kind of just end up dying anyway as they hit into your lightsaber. So you're really not fighting the robots now that I watch it. You're really just fighting the ship. So just jump and hit that red part of the ship. And that's it. That ends the stage. Very easy. Next up is a very easy flight sequence. And yeah, it's not going to require too much practice or skill. It shouldn't be difficult. I think this was another one that I beat on the first try, but I'm not completely sure. But if not, it didn't take long to beat. So yeah, all you really have to do here is just shoot these things as they appear. Just try to move your ship around and shoot them. One of the buttons will activate a shield, so if you hold it down, you'll keep your shield on. So when you hear a gunshot being fired or see one of those green projectiles on screen, just hold down your shield for a brief moment to absorb the impact and not take any damage to your health. I wasn't even doing that initially and, still beat it, but I started to do that a little bit later in the fight. I didn't really know exactly what the fuck was going on when I first got here. I wasn't sure exactly the mechanics of this sequence, but yeah, very easy. Even if you don't really know what the fuck's going on, you'll probably beat it pretty quickly. But I really do like the Mode 7 levels. I think they give a cool variety, and some of them are done pretty decently. None of them are great, but I think I like the ones better in Super Empire Strikes Back with having to take down the AT-ATs, I believe they're called, with the tripwire. That was pretty cool. There was really nothing that stood out in these Mode 7 stages for this version of the game. And the final stage, like I said, was very weak. It was a cool concept, but just badly implemented. So after doing this for a little while, the stage will end. Just use your shield occasionally. And, I didn't even use it too effectively and, beat it easily. And it shows up in the top right how many ties are remaining, where it says ties times 0. That's how many were left. I didn't even realize that when I was playing. I just played it until it ended. But now I'm watching the footage. So yeah, again, we're going to go with Chewie because I just feel like he fucking destroys everything in this game pretty much, for the most part. I think there was only one part where I actually purposely used Luke because in the early part of the game that I mentioned, because he's good with a lot of platforming, and the lightsaber is kind of useful with that to take out enemies. But for the most part, Chewie pretty much dominates this game. There are a few parts where you can't use them, so, like the Ewok is one of the only parts really where you can't use Chewbacca. But yeah, so basically just going to be busting through, shooting shit, spinning, using those invincibility frames. There's going to be a checkpoint pretty early in the stage, which you're going to see me get. Spin through the doorways or jump over them, you should be fine. You don't really have to worry about fighting the enemies. So now you're going to jump across this ledge coming up and, get the heart and then jump across the ledge and just spin and take out the turret and these blocks. And get the blaster power up. It's always good to get. Aside from that, when this platform reaches its peak, you want to do a double jump. And just keep jumping. You'll be able to climb up there eventually. But if you don't get it when it goes up at the peak, you may be wrestling with that for a little while and getting stuck on the platforms and falling. You can fall from the lasers when they shoot you. But just be careful with that. Try to jump immediately. Now, there's a secret area up here, which is really good. You'll see it. This is the secret area, but you'll see me go up into it further. And up here is going to be extra lives, blaster power-ups, which are one of the most useful things that you get up here. It is a pain in the ass, though, as far as like knocking out these blocks. They're very finicky about shooting them. It's kind of hard to knock out the ones you want. But eventually you will be able to break through and get the things that you want to get. But you'll see me wrestling with this for a little while. I wasn't fast at clearing out these blocks at all. Because if you're directly underneath them, you can't really shoot up at them because there's a gap in your shot that comes out of your gun. So if the block is right on the tip of your gun, you can't shoot it. So sometimes you want to use the spin attack to clear out some of them. You just got to take little shots and try to clear out what you can. It's kind of a pain in the ass. But there is good shit in this area, so, it's worth collecting some of this stuff. Every time I died, I pretty much went up here again and tried to collect the shit, so I did waste a lot of time going back here again and again. The most useful thing to get up here, really, is not so much the 1-ups, but it's the blaster power, because it takes out the guns a lot faster when you're moving on throughout the level. You'll be able to take out the turrets real fast with that. If you could bring it to the boss, it would be great, but I didn't end up bringing the power-ups to the boss. But there is a checkpoint near the boss, luckily, so I was able to beat it that way with just a regular base gun. So yeah, once you're done with that hidden area, you can start climbing, going through this path here. You do get extra lives sometimes on, I think, based on points. Though I'm not sure because my score was pretty low, so I don't even know where that extra life came from. It may have been a pickup from an enemy or something like that. Occasionally I'll see extra life awarded just pop up, and I'm not sure exactly how I got them. Maybe because I collected a bunch of those spinning emblems. Maybe those give you 1-ups. So here I fell down here, but it didn't matter because I was still able to continue going to the right. Generally, you want to follow these arrows, and you'll get a general idea of where you need to go after a while. But the arrows give you a pretty good idea where to go. This is the part that you want to use save and load states to practice, just to learn the layout of the level and where you need to go. So I recommend using save and load states just to practice these areas. I didn't really do that. I probably should have. I just started from the checkpoint whenever I died. But I would have been a lot faster if I would have used save and load states to practice where I was supposed to go. Like make a save state here and then practice that. But what you need to do is you need to get up on that ledge and then wait for the platform and jump up on it that way. You can't jump platform to platform for this part. You know, to get on this small platform, you have to jump off on the side ledge and then jump on the platform. Which I didn't know for a while. I was trying to make the jump by timing the platforms and, dying a lot by trying to do that. So that's not what you want to do on that part. Here you just press up whenever you get to a doorway and you'll be transported to the next area that you're supposed to be in. So you can't get lost here. And you see the fully powered up gun takes them out very fast. Got that from that secret area, so that was useful. The main use is it really clears out those turrets fast, which can be a big problem. They can drain your life pretty fast. They're hard to dodge because you're on these narrow platforms and you're getting shot with the turrets. So, you can dodge and do some jumping, but it's a lot, harder to do that if the guns are around for too long. But yeah, basically just going to shoot and spin your way through here. Try to collect some of the health, to get your health up if you can. You could get your health bar back up to max since the enemies seem to keep respawning infinitely. So you could probably max out your health bar if it's not full. I didn't bother with that. So drop down on this platform. Make sure you drop directly down on the platform, even though you can't see it. I think there is a way to look down and to look up. I think there may be a way to do that, but I never figured it out since I didn't use it. But that may be one of the controls. I saw somebody using it in a video, so I think you can do that. But eventually you want to drop down here and follow these platforms and then start moving off to the right again. The arrows give you a pretty good idea, general direction. The boss of this stage is tough. It wasn't too bad once I got an idea of the way to play it, but it's kind of tough initially if you don't stay in the center of the screen. It can be tough, but it was pretty easy once I got into a rhythm with it, and I pretty much stayed on the center platforms at all times, which I'll try to explain because it takes a while to kill with the regular gun. I think I only had the base gun, but there is a checkpoint near the boss of the stage, which is good. So yeah, here you'll get what I believe is the final checkpoint, maybe. Actually, I think there's one more checkpoint after this, but it's really, really close to this. So yeah, use the laser. If you have the regular laser, just use that to bounce the beams around and take out the guns. You're going to have to jump up to take this one out on the left, but just take that out. And then just get in these little compartments to avoid the green laser that expands. Just take your time, very easy. You're going to see another checkpoint in this area coming up. You get a blaster power up here and some health, so that's good. There's also a shield off to the right up here, which can be good. You can kind of just bust through this. You don't have to play too well. Drop down. You don't even have to take the platform, really. You can just drop down to the right and grab that checkpoint. Now you're going to have the boss coming up after you get through all these, this big mess of garbage here, all these blocks. So yeah, this can be tough. There's a lot of slowdown, which can mess up your jumping, and you won't always get the double jump when you think you should get it, because it'll eat your input sometimes. But, yeah, you want to clear out some room so that you can jump down into where these blocks are and then spin around and clear out some of that. And once you have an opening, you don't want to jump out of here, just drop down. See, I did jump, but it's better just to drop down onto that platform. But either way, try to stay in the center and just keep shooting at it in the middle. And always try to stay in the center. When the platform goes down a little bit, climb back up and get back to the center and just start shooting it again. You may want to use some diagonal shots to get the hits in. But just keep shooting towards the direction of where that thing is in the center and just keep jumping. You'll know when the laser's about to come out, so you want to try to jump around that time and stay in the center at all times. You don't want to go too far down because then you'll just automatically die. You go too far up, you can't really shoot it. So you want to try to stay mostly keep in the center mostly. I mean, looking at it now, I guess I do move pretty far up. But the idea is to try to always focus on the center, and shoot at the center and try to shoot down at it and jump when the laser's about to come out. So there is some timing with it, but it's really not too hard. You're getting a rhythm with it, and it's not bad. Eventually, once you shoot the turret off, you just have to deal with the regular boss with no turret. So all it can do is try to ram you. It's very easy once it gets to that point. And that's one of the hardest, that's probably the hardest stage in the game, aside from the flight sequence. Which, the flight sequence is definitely a bitch. But I'll definitely break that down. And I think I have some good advice for that. This stage is really not anything difficult. It's pretty much more of the same. So yeah, you're going to be just pretty much spinning through and using force heal to kind of just blaze your way through this area. Continue climbing up. Get whatever you want, but there is one item that it shows the LucasArts emblem. If you get that, it makes you move super fast, and I wouldn't really recommend that for this part. I would probably skip on that shit. So don't even bother picking up some of the life bar extensions if they're around that thing, because it's just going to probably make it harder to move. I don't think it's going to be that helpful, but you can try it if you want. I never got it because I figured it would just be annoying moving super fast while trying to climb, because it makes your control very spastic. So you're mainly just going to be ascending these platforms. Occasionally you may have one of the platforms fall because you're trying to get an item, as you see me do here. And, the only way to climb back up at this point, since I wasted the falling platform, the only thing I can do now is go all the way back down to the bottom, and then the platforms will spawn back. So that's what I do. I do end up respawning the platforms by going all the way down to the bottom. That's what I'm doing here. I was hoping that they would respawn, but I wasn't sure. But they actually do respawn. So if you do knock the platforms down, you can respawn them. The platforming is very easy, but if you try collecting some stuff, you may end up having one of the platforms fall like I did. So now at this checkpoint, there's hearts here, but there's also a 1-up here every time. So no matter how badly you do, you should always be able to get that 1-up, and you should never have to start from the beginning of this level again, because you should always be able just to get that 1-up and negate that. Now I get the speed power up, and I speed through that area, and I find it useful for that part. But there's another 1-up up here and another speed power up. So you see I got the other 1-up. So basically, if you wanted to, this is another point where you could get 2 1-ups and die, and basically you could keep gaining a life. So if you wanted to farm 1-ups, you could by committing suicide, but it is a little tedious and it would take long. And like I said, if you're this far in the game, you're not going to really need 1-ups at this point. There's not any long checkpoints or anything at this point of the game. You're almost done with the game, basically, and the levels are short after this point. So I don't recommend farming up lives. But yeah, for those 2 bosses, use your heal force and just keep flipping around until they both die, using your lightsaber flips. There's really no strategy there except for just healing and flipping. So very easy. This is another very, very easy flight sequence. I think this was another one that I beat. I think I definitely beat this one on the first try. All I did was shoot at these guys and just get the hearts as they appeared. I just tried to collect hearts whenever they appeared from the enemies. That was it. And that was enough to survive. I didn't really have to do anything aside from just collect the hearts and shoot. There may be a button to speed up that I'm using to accelerate, but I don't remember. But it's very basic. As long as you just keep collecting the hearts, you should stay alive long enough to beat it. And there's only 2 more left. You see how short this is. It shows on the upper right yet again how many ties are left, and not very many in that level. So now you're approaching the end of the game. And I'm going to go through my notes once we get to that final flight stage. And I'm going to post my notes in the description of the video. So you're going to see all my notes for the flight sequence, and you're going to be able to follow exactly what I did. So it should break everything down, make it much easier, as I said. But I'm going to try to cover it in the 2 or 3 minutes that I have to cover it during the flight sequence. While the flight sequence is playing, I'm going to try to cover everything. But, some parts there's a lot of details, and it's not really possible for me to cover it all while the scene is playing out. So for that, I'm gonna have it in the description. It's all going to be, in that text. So yeah, this level is basically, you can get a little bit lost in this level. This is another one where you can get a little bit lost, but not too bad. The general idea is just to keep ascending upward. You want to find the path that keeps going up, basically, is the main idea of this level. So I am going to get lost at some points, and I didn't really edit the getting lost parts out too much. I don't know if I edited any of the aimless wandering out, because I didn't know this level well enough to make a bunch of edits, to try to show exactly where to go. But this was straightforward enough. I don't think it ended up stretching out for too long in the video, because most of the time I got lost was the few times that I died is where I got lost, and that the parts where I died aren't shown. So since it only shows the successful plays on each of the checkpoints, it's probably not going to be too drawn out. But I do remember that the general idea was just to keep moving up, keep jumping up to the next platform. And use that heal force, as needed to keep your health bar full at all times. As long as you do that, it's pretty easy. There's a 1-up down here, but I don't think you actually need to go down there. I think it's just a 1-up. At this point, 1-ups are not extremely useful, because the levels are not that hard, and some of them are very short. Like the Emperor, the level with the Emperor starts you right on the Emperor, so there is no checkpoints. It's just an Emperor boss fight for the whole level. Very easy fight. Then the Darth Vader stage, I don't think it has any checkpoints. It's a very short stage. You fight maybe 2 enemies, and then you fight Darth Vader. So for those levels, you really don't need any lives. You just start there every time. So no sense in farming lives at all beyond this point. It's pretty much just a total waste of time. Earlier you may have wanted to use it maybe to farm lives for that Chewbacca stage, which is one of the harder levels, but I think it's easier just to learn where to go in the stage and just beat it normally. For the first Super Star Wars, actually, I farmed lives in that game way back, and for that, it was hugely helpful. I didn't really even have to learn the game that well to beat it. It was kind of cheap, but it was legit. I may go back to it again one day. Maybe I'll beat it on normal. I'll probably beat it on easy. I don't know if I'll farm lives again for the tutorial. I may, but not farming lives would be more of a refinement for the tutorial, I guess, because you do have to play better when you're not relying on having, 100 lives. So it does force you to execute segments better, and you'll die more and have to redo segments more. So, it could be useful to just play through it without that. I would definitely have to learn the game better. Of course, I'd have to relearn the game all over again because I completely forgot the game. Just like this, I had not remembered, how to play this exactly. It's been like 27 years or something. I may have, I've only fucked with the game maybe briefly a few times, since then, but I haven't actually worked on it until a few days ago. So yeah, you're just continuing to climb and using a heal as needed. You have plenty of health when you use that force heal, and there's a lot of checkpoints, so you really shouldn't have much of a problem as long as you keep trying to climb up. Whenever you see platforms above you, try to keep moving up. Take the elevators up as well. The game is mostly pretty linear, but, there are some parts where you can get a little bit lost taking multiple paths and things like that. There's that one level that's pretty bad with that. And the level with the turrets and Chewbacca with the floating boss on the platforms, that one can be a little tricky to know where to go. That one took me a little while until I started checking some videos. But aside from that, it's a pretty straightforward game, and it's pretty easy for these type of games. But like I said, that flight sequence is going to end a lot of runs. A lot of people will never beat the game because of that one sequence. So, get prepared to spend some time practicing it. It may take you a few hours, even with the tips that I provide, but it should cut down that time significantly. And I understand that some people are probably not even going to want to sit through it because it's very frustrating and very, it's not clear what the fuck you're really supposed to do. But I think it's going to be a lot clearer after I break it down. I'm pretty much eliminating using up and down controls altogether and just focusing on left, right, and rotating your shit. I've pretty much simplified the entire scene down to that. So as long as you really take into account like what I'm saying, every little hint that I list on those notes is for a reason. And as long as you take all that into account, try to implement all that, I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. But I think it will still take a lot of practice. So now on this stage, you're just going to be fighting Darth Vader, but first you have to fight some of these easy enemies. And all you got to do is flip around and use your healing if you need it. You don't have to play tactfully. I didn't try to block or anything. All you see me doing is flipping around, collecting the Force power-ups out of the trash cans or whatever those are. And use heal if you need it. That's it. And soon after this, you're going to be fighting Darth Vader. But now, initially I was having trouble on these fucking stairs. I wasn't losing health or anything, but you see, you'd expect that you could just walk down the stairs, right? Like, I mean, why not? But no, for this part, you have to press down and jump to drop through the platform. You wouldn't expect to do that on a staircase. It's just kind of weird. And then I tried to do it on this staircase, and it doesn't work on this staircase. So it's just odd that one staircase you have to drop through, the other one you just go down normally. Just one of those weird little things. It's not a big problem or anything. It was just a little odd. So all I did here was no skill. I just keep double jumping, and I look at my health bar the whole time, and when it gets kind of low, I'll use my heal. And that's all I did. So I just basically brute forced my way through Darth Vader by doing that. And you see, it was very close, but it was easy as hell. I mean, I think I may have beaten that the first time I got to it. If not, it was very close to the first time I got to it. So, not difficult at all. Very similar strategy I'm showing you on the Emperor here. It's a little bit different. With the Emperor, the only difference that I made was you don't want to fall through some of the platforms because you'll die if you fall through the bottom platforms after he breaks them. So be careful about the bottom platforms. Aside from that, what I'm doing here is constantly jump flipping. I'm not trying to dodge anything. What I'm trying to do is constantly attack the boss at all times and damage him. So I'm constantly doing damage. And the only thing I'm looking out for is I'm using force heal when my health gets a little low, maybe halfway I use the heal. And I'm also, at the same time, I'm destroying those barrels by the Emperor that give me the force power. It replenishes my force power so it doesn't run out and I can continue to heal myself. So when I see that getting low, see my force heal is very low. I can't really use it at this point. I go back to these barrels and I just collect more so that I can continue to use it. So I'm constantly budgeting that. I'm not using the force heal too aggressively, otherwise I might run out before I killed the boss. But I'm just using it as needed, and I'm continually fighting the Emperor near the barrel so that I can continue to pick it up as I'm damaging him at the same time. And, as long as you budget it like that and keep attacking him, it only took me a few tries with that method. I almost beat him the first time I got to him doing that. Very fucking easy. So now you're going to get a taste of the flight sequences, but this is a very easy one. I actually heard that you don't have to press a single button. You can just keep this ship centered. And, you may not even have to press a button from the time the sequence begins. You may not even have to shoot. And you'll beat this stage just by watching it go through, just by watching yourself drive through it. You don't have to actually participate, apparently. I didn't test that. I don't know if it's true. But all I did was I never moved as far as what I remember, and I just kept the firing button held down, and I didn't even try to adjust at all my movement. All I did was hold down fire and maybe an accelerate button. I think there may be an accelerate button. I think I held that down. I think it's B. So I pretty much just probably held down B and the fire button, and that was it. So there's nothing to explain here except you're basically watching a cinematic at this point. You really don't have to participate much at all, if at all. Like I said, you may be able to just let this scene run, and it may just beat itself. So you could do that if you want. Try it. But what's coming up, I'm going to start getting ready to explain the flight sequence best I can. I got my notes up here, and I'm going to try to explain that. I'm going to start explaining it now because, It's going to take a while. So the final flight sequence that's after this part took me around 1 hour and 47 minutes to beat. And when I was younger, I couldn't beat it. And that was on the easy setting. This is on Brave, so it's a little harder. You do die a lot faster. But, yeah, it took pretty long to beat. But my tips for that are avoid using the up and down buttons to center yourself. Just leave up and down alone. For the most part, you pretty much want to avoid using that altogether. So you can focus on just using left and right directions on the controller. And you're going to use your L and R buttons to rotate your ship. So that's all you're going to focus on is those two different things, left and right, and rotating with L and R. You want to hold the B button the entire time to remain at full speed the entire sequence. You do never want to let off the B button. So hold that down. So for the left and right adjustments that you're going to be making, you mainly want to tap the direction briefly to avoid obstacles. You do not want to hold left or right. By holding it, you'll often crash into walls. So you just basically, when you see certain obstacles, which I'm going to mention, you want to just tap left and right in the opposite direction of the obstacle. Usually it's a wall that juts out to the left or right. In the narrow corridor sections, there's only a few narrow corridor sections, and they have obstacles that pop out the left or right side. So it really only takes a tap usually to correct and to keep on the right path and not take damage. Okay, and then for the final hallway, you're going to look for these gray brick pattern columns. They look different than everything else. It's this gray brick pattern. And anytime you see one pop up on the screen, you're going to just tap the opposite direction. It's going to be either left or right that you're going to tap very briefly. And you're only going to tap it once and for a very brief period and just release. And every time you see those brick patterns, you do that tap to the opposite direction, and you should be able to get through the entire hallway without taking any damage. That's all you have to do. If you hold the directions, though, you will end up crashing into shit most likely. So don't hold it, just tap. And you're only going to be focusing on left and right and your rotations, which are L and R. Now, for the rotations, the only time you're going to rotate your ship with using L and R is you're going to rotate when you see these specific background changes. There's only two different patterns that show up. And you're going to focus, when you see, say, this pattern, we're not at that part yet, but I'm going to try to explain what patterns I'm talking about. But after this shooting pattern, after all these ships basically die and you get through this segment, then I'm going to explain what I'm talking about a little bit more in depth. I already covered most of the details so that I don't have to try to iterate all that stuff as the scene is taking place. So I'm going to go over that again. I'm going to reinforce all that, and then I'm going to post it in the description, all my notes that I just read out. So here now is the final sequence of the game and the hardest part of the game. So this is what I was detailing just now. So I'm going to explain a little bit more. Now when you see, you're not going to touch up and down pretty much at all. But when you see the pattern changes in the background, see that? You're going to rotate. Just like you see me rotate there. And those are what I'm going to call, that's another one. And there's only two different backgrounds. You just saw them both. So when you see those are your rotation points. Now, the way I mapped it out, I actually mapped out which direction to rotate your ship when each background appears. So for the first one, it's right. The second one, it's left. The next one, it's left. The next one, it's left. Then you have a long tunnel. Then it's left again. Then at the next rotation point, it's right. Then right, right. And then you have the final tunnel. Now, I'm not going to tell you all those as they're happening. I'm just going to list that out for you so you can follow it. Now for this is the first tunnel. For this tunnel, you're going to be dodging walls for quite a bit. This is where I was talking about tapping the directional pad in the opposite direction that the wall is jutting out. So basically, if you see something that's covering up the center hallway, you're going to be tapping left or right in the opposite direction just briefly to dodge that wall. And now you're back to the rotation points. Again, you're going to follow my directions for the rotation points, where I say rotate right, rotate left, etc. A lot of them are very easy to memorize because a lot of times you'll do a left rotation and then there'll be 3 or 4 right rotations right after it. So it makes it pretty easy to remember it. After a while, you won't have to look at the notes anymore. But print those out initially and try to follow those. Maybe pause the game if you need to keep up with it. Eventually, you'll memorize it because you're going to die a lot. Now, when you see these brick patterns, they look different. They're like these square brick patterns. You're going to tap right or left in the opposite direction that you see the brick pattern appear. So if it appears right here on the left, you're tapping right very briefly. You don't want to hold down right or left. And that's going to be pretty much it. That's pretty much all the information you need. This does go on for a while, but after this, you're pretty much done. As long as you're holding down accelerate, you should automatically win once you get through this hallway. You see I fucked up a few times and lost a lot of health, but I really didn't need to. I fucked up kind of late into the level. You don't have to rotate and spin here, but if you want to get a seizure, it's a good way to do it. But at this point, you're pretty much done with the level. So yeah, what I'm gonna do though, I'm gonna show the notes in the description, my full notes, and that way you can read over everything that I explained. But the most important thing to understand, aside from some of the simple things I explained, was that I call these forced rotation obstacles in my notes. And what that means is that whenever you see those background changes, it means you're forced to rotate in a direction. And initially what's hard is you don't know which way to rotate, and you get hit and get killed a lot. But as long as you follow my rotations, which, for the first one that appears, it's going to be right. Then you're going to rotate left. Now, you do need to know how long to rotate for. You want to rotate until you pretty much get centered within the obstacle. And the best way that I can explain it is look at the directions that I list and watch exactly how I'm doing it to get a feel for exactly how I'm rotating. Because, just reading the notes alone isn't really going to be enough. You want to watch what I'm doing and analyze the video. But I think if you follow the directions that I laid out, keep in mind the directions are only for the rotation points. Those are the points where the background changes and you're forced to rotate. And then there's only 2 long tunnels. So that'll kind of give you an orientation of where those are at. But I recommend not touching the up and down directions at all. Because by touching those and changing that, you're going to start crashing into more shit. And you really don't need to adjust up and down at all. You can pretty much just use left and right. I think I barely ever used up or down to make any adjustments. I pretty much left that alone in the end. And only focused on left and right adjustments and the rotations. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.